CNBC Steve Kovach joins us now, along with Big Technology's Alex Kantrowitz, who is also a CNBC contributor. Gentlemen, it's good to have you here. Steve, I heard an analyst on an earlier program today call this a prove-it moment.
Yes.
You see it that way as well?
It's the chance to prove it. We'll see if they actually prove it, because, like we've been saying all day, Scott, is a year ago was supposed to be the prove it moment. This was Apple Intelligence. This was the big debut. Their take on AI and the LLMs and this whole big ChatGPT moment. This was supposed to be their response, and they beefed it. And then they didn't make it happen. They failed to execute. The features that did launch have been unimpressive. The ChatGPT integration did go off without a hitch. However, it's not as good as using ChatGPT, the regular app. And then, of course, the big Siri miss, which was supposed to be the answer to ChatGPT. And we have no idea when that's going to come and what that's going to look like. So the question now is, what are they going to show us on Monday that kind of fills in those gaps that they left open for themselves?
It's all about the developers at the end of the day. So is what we think a prove-it moment really at a prove-it platform? Is it the right place to find out all the answers that we need to learn?
In my perspective, it absolutely is. So what we've seen with Apple is sort of a flip. The most important events used to be the hardware events, the iPhone rollouts. That was the flagship moment for Apple. That has shifted to WWDC. Of course, 2 years ago, we saw the Vision Pro rollout. Last year, Apple Intelligence. And you're right, it is all about the developers and what's built on top of the iOS platform, because the most important business unit for Apple is that services business. That's where the growth is coming from. If you look at iPhone shipments, according to IDC, 2024 was actually slower than 2023. The revenue is about the same as the year before, but that is likely because the average selling price of the iPhone is going up, which means all of the focus for Apple is about services. It's about what can be developed on top of that platform. We know there's going to be a big focus on the operating system this year. But as far as the big flashy prove-it moment, that was supposed to be last year. As Steve mentioned, we didn't see it. This year, in terms of the big AI advances, people are talking about it as a gap year, meaning we're not going to see much from Apple on that front. We have to wait to next year.
And no one else is taking a gap year, by the way. Yeah. Apple is.
Yeah,
right.
People are like doubling down on what they're doing at a really fast,
can't keep up with
fast pace. You've described Apple coming into this event as facing threats on multiple fronts,
right?
Arguably more so than they have at any point in time under Tim Cook's leadership.
Right.
That's a fair way to look at that?
100%. So Alex and I were talking about this just now during the commercial break. If you look back, the biggest challenge that I can remember Tim Cook facing to the business was Samsung. Remember the threat to Samsung in the early 2010s? These big, beautiful screen phones, and Apple had these tiny phones that they were slobbering over these big Samsung phones, right? And then all of a sudden, Apple, we're just going to make a big phone. Off to the races. Samsung's a second thought. We don't even think about it, and it's been just pure growth from there. And now we see the growth in iPhone stalling. We see competition in China big time from Huawei. They're losing market share in their second most important market. So now look what they're facing today. The tariff situation, again, not something that they self-inflicted, but it is the problem they have to deal with. The Epic Games lawsuit, we're talking about developers right now. These developers want to make money too. And right now they're looking at this option to make web payments as a way to get around these App Store fees. What can Apple say to them to keep them in the ecosystem? Is their AI development platform, to your point, Alex, is it good enough to say, okay, we're going to stick with Apple instead of going to the web or somewhere else?
I feel like now also in the zeitgeist is Johnny Ive.
Yes. Oh, and that too.
And OpenAI. And Johnny Ive talking about devices and talking about legacy devices that don't seem to be as relevant as they once were or won't be as we continue to move forward in AI. Is that this overhang that we need to think about, that they're going to be thinking about out there always now?
I think they have to start thinking about it. They have been thinking about it for years. In fact, they released the HomePod a couple of years ago, which didn't work because their AI team was disappointing. It was their answer to the Amazon Echo and Alexa Inside. We didn't see much movement there. And you even have recently executives like Eddie Q, who run services, saying maybe 10 years from now we won't need an iPhone. Now, I think a lot of this talk is hyperbolic. Johnny Ive is saying the iPhone is a legacy device because he's working with an AI company right now in OpenAI. So of course he's going to position
anybody
himself.
Calling it a legacy device.
Well, at the same time, you got to think he's putting more pressure on himself than he's putting on Apple. They're putting more pressure on OpenAI because what if that device comes out and it doesn't blow us away the way that original iPhone did? Boy, is that going to be an embarrassment for OpenAI.